we watched also, a completely unrelated note, we watched Killers of the Flower Moon. Killers of the Flower Moon is the new Martin Scorcese movie, as you've probably heard of it. It's like 3.5 hours long, or it's like 3 hours long. It's really long. It's like 2 movies in one. And it's really good. It is very, very good. I had a bit of a migraine during the last 30 minutes because I'd been awake for too long and staring at a screen. But it was... it's a really good movie. It is definitely like, okay, I can see why this is one of the films that he would pick to be, in his late life, late career kind of movie. If you don't know the premise of Killers of the Flower Moon, it is based off of a real historical happening. Takes place in the 1920s. Follows Leonardo DiCaprio, who comes home to Oklahoma to live around in the same area as the same town as his uncle, played by Robert De Niro. Now they live in Osage country. The Osage Native American tribe were a tribe who was forced off of their land, as happened with many native tribes in the U.S. They were forced off their land to live on this dedicated territory, and it just so happens that a couple decades later, it was discovered that there is a fuck ton of oil on that land. There's a lot of oil on that land, baby, and it's not technically United States property. Reservations have like a special status. So I don't know exactly what it is. It might be something close to being like an autonomous community kind of thing, like the Basque region is in Europe, where my people come from. But so they can't just like take ownership of it. So there was a period of time where the Osage people were the richest people in the United States, and they are living large. And so there's a lot going on. And Leonardo DiCaprio comes home from the war. He's going to live with his uncle, Robert De Niro, who has been, well, not live with him, but he's going to like live in the area, in the town. And De Niro's been living in this community for decades. Probably you get this vibe like 20 or 30 years. And he knows these people. He's friends with them. He's seen their children grow up, kind of thing, right? He's considered a friend of the Osage. And I don't want to go into too many spoilers, but there's a moment at the start of the film where DiCaprio is like, he's got this job driving taxis. He's a driver. That's how he's making his money now. And there's this Osage woman named Molly, and he drives her frequently and kind of tries to make conversation, and he kind of takes a liking to her, but he hasn't, it's just like a little thing at the moment. And De Niro pulls him aside one day, and he's like, "Hey, so you know how all the oil money, it's owned by the tribe. They've got this deal where everything is owned by the tribe. If you're in the tribe, you're entitled to a cut of the oil money." He goes, "Well, if you marry an Osage woman, then that money is in your family. And, she's got she's got these sisters, she's got her mother, and the money's also going to them, but, if there were less Osage people, more of it, would be going to you and your family." And a lot of bad things happen. A lot of bad things happen. I'm going to talk about spoilers now. So let's just skip to the next bit. If you really care, it's a good movie. It's a very good movie. So, Leonardo DiCaprio's character is kind of interesting because he's like a really bad person, but he sort of justifies it by the idea that it's for his family. He really does, like, you get the impression, I don't know. So his problem as a character, like as a person, is that he's just a weak-willed person. He loves his wife, but he won't stand up to his uncle who's killing her family. Right? Like if you really think about it, and you don't even have to really think about it, you just have to observe the movie. DiCaprio's character is complicit and aids in the murder of Molly's siblings. I think her mother dies of natural causes, but like he's right, like he knows what's going on. And like her friends and people she's like probably cousins with, and he doesn't do anything about it because his uncle just kind of walks all over him. He just kind of puppeteers him. What's the uncle's name? I don't know. Just De Niro's character. He comes, this is like the 20s. He's like an old guy. So he's definitely like he was probably born in like the early 1800s, like the 1830s or something. He's coming from a world where things like political marriages are very normal. That was kind of one of my early impressions of him. He's coming from a world where marrying someone for money is very, it's really normal. And also he's living in kind of a new world with this stuff like insurance. So De Niro's his whole thing is just committing insurance fraud. He takes out these insurance claims on stuff, and then something bad happens to it, and then he collects the insurance money. And he does this. This is like his main thing. This system has popped up that's relatively new in his lifetime, and he's just exploiting it for money. And he's arranging things because he's such a powerful guy with the way he can influence people. And you get these points where he like takes out a life insurance policy on someone. Like he is such a fucking awful human being. There's this guy like I think the character's name is Henry. This guy, he's known for years, probably like 10 years is the vibe you get. And Henry, he's Osage, and he's depressed, and he's tried to commit suicide twice already. They call it he's got the melancholies. That's what they call it, because it's the 20s. He's tried to commit suicide twice, and De Niro is like, oh well, that he just sees profit. He just sees potential money, so he has him sign a life insurance policy. And then he arranges to have him killed, to have the guy killed. And it's like, holy shit. He's like inhuman. He's like a level, it goes from like, he's kind of a scumbag who like gets his nephew to get into this kind of like marriage for money to, oh, he's like a real scumbag. He's like a real monster. And when he starts, there's stuff that happens before that, right? That's not the first thing that happens, but that was like one of the very specific things that's like, wow, that's like a very personal relationship that you didn't give a fuck about. And there's this great scene. I love it because he reminds me of my grandfather, where he's talking to the tax attorney. And for whatever reason they don't go into, there's been some kind of a conflict with someone in Denver. I don't know. They never say exactly what it is, but he just says like, yeah, Denver is disputing the claim. He's like, what the hell do I care about Denver? And the guy's like, they've made a dispute and it'll take a while. And he's just like, where's my Henry whatever money? That's how he calls it. It's like, Jesus Christ. And things just kind of keep escalating and escalating where DiCaprio is doing some really bad, just these awful things, some really awful stuff, and he's kind of justifying it by the fact that he can kind of ignore it, and well, his uncle told him to do it, and oh, it's for my family, and it's one of those things where the character's logic is that it only works because he's not trying not to think about it, and he's in denial. He's in like a kind of a sense of denial or willful ignorance where he's not. If he was to actually sit down and think about what he was doing, probably maybe would be changing his ways a little bit. But he never does that, and no one's ever around to do that because it's all kept so secretive. His wife has diabetes, and Molly's got diabetes, and they get her insulin, which at the time was brand new. And they could only afford it because of all the oil money they've got. And the insulin, so she's getting like, she starts to take matters into her own hands, and she starts to go petitioning. Like she goes up to Washington to try and get them to send someone down to investigate the murders that have been going on. There's like 30 murders, just random deaths. Like, that doesn't just happen. And they start telling DiCaprio, because he's the one administering, because she doesn't trust the doctors, they start telling him to give her a little bit of, they don't say what it is, but it's clearly some kind of poison. Like, slowly poison her through her insulin. And it's like, oh, dude. Oh, there's no coming back from this. There's no coming back from this. I think the biggest there's a big turning point. So things just, the first like half of the movie, which is like an hour and a half, things just keep getting worse and worse and worse, and DiCaprio is complicit and he's doing certain things. And it starts changing when, at the halfway point, I felt, which is where things start to get a little too real. And the guy that they hire to take out someone he puts a little too much dynamite under the house. And dude, there was this shot. DiCaprio and Molly, they're in bed. And they're in their bedroom, and the lights go out, and the camera just pulls back, and they're on the right, and the windows are on the left. And I was like, something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. There's too much negative space in this. And then, boom! The windows get blown out. The whole place, it's this gigantic explosion. It's like, oh, holy shit. And they go out, and this entire house is just a pile of rubble. There's corpses. It's really bad. It's gory as fuck. DiCaprio is walking out, and he's just like, it's the first moment that it gets real for him. Because every other time, he's kind of been able to like ignore it, or he didn't like see the person die, or he was kind of on the sidelines. And it was always like it was a singular person. This is like, the wife died, like the husband died who they were targeting, the wife died, the maid died. There was probably other people in that house. There's at least like 2 innocent deaths of people that they knew, and it was a house that his wife had been at like 2 hours earlier. Like earlier in that scene, she gets home from their place, and he's just kind of walking, and everyone's just running outside to see what's going on, and he's just kind of walking, and his face, he's just like, oh, like this is new. This is a new experience. And he's seeing the effects. It's not subtle anymore. It's not quiet. It's literally a gigantic explosion. And that's the point, I think, where he starts to kind of turn a little bit, and the conflict starts to arise more so, like in him internally. And then later on, he is not It's like something's really wrong. Something's really bad about what he's doing, and it's getting really hard for him to ignore it. He can't ignore it anymore. And then his uncle has him sign a life insurance policy. And he's like, why? And his uncle says, oh, it's just a formality. It's just in case something happens. And you're like, oh no. And I think he signs it, but there's like he's starting to see this ruthless, sociopathic quality in his uncle, that he sees even his nephew as just kind of a tool to keep the fucking oil money. After that point as well, that's around the time that a new element gets introduced, which really spices the movie up, which is, hi, I'm from the Federal Bureau of Investigations. And DiCaprio looks at him like, the what? Because it was just founded, right? Hoover's president at the moment. He's just founded the Federal Bureau of Investigations. So now the government's involved, like the federal government. And De Niro, he can manipulate the tiny little town. He can even pull some influence on the state level. But he can't fuck with the government. And he knows that, and that's like a significant threat. If you take out, because there were private investigators that were hired earlier in the movie, they both got taken out, like killed. If you kill a federal agent, like if he doesn't show back up, it's just gonna get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're not gonna be able to stop it. So now there's this like intense pressure on them that like, oh god, they're gonna find something out, and they find something out. And then the last 30 minutes of the movie it turns into like a not a courtroom drama. There is a courtroom and there is drama. But it sort of surrounds this new court case. And there's this whole back and forth of, does he side with his uncle? Does he side with the Osage people, Who is he loyal to? And I love the whale shows up. The hell is his name? Oh my god. If this was any other day, I'd be able to remember his name. Brendan Fraser. Brendan Fraser shows up, and he's good. He's a really good actor, man. He shows up for this kind of small part. He's playing the attorney for De Niro's character. And god, there's just this scene where DiCaprio goes back home and he gets called into like, it's like the whole, like all the whites in town, including his other family and the lawyer are there. And they're basically telling him to not to testify against his uncle. And he's under all this pressure and you see like there's totally this element, and I think like in the modern day we've thankfully I think kind of got I think people are a little more, how would you say it, a little more reasonable about not being so slavishly devoted to the idea of preserving the family image. Like, De Niro should fucking rot in jail forever, right? That's the kind of character he is. He should rot in jail. You can't, like, you don't fix someone like that. Like, he is like a calculated piece of evil. But like his aunt is like, oh, you can't sell out your uncle. And DiCaprio, who is just like this total spineless coward, is just, no, of course I will. Like, he folds instantly to pressure. And you're like, dude, don't. And I think the moment where that changes, is when he meets, I'm trying to put the plot points in order. I believe where it changes is... Fuck, is it? I think it is. There's a scene where he meets up with Molly. So Molly has been taking her medicine at home. She's been being slowly poisoned at home, and her condition just gets worse and worse and worse. And it's like, oh man, it's very stressful to watch as she's just like sweaty and in bed and just like, you're like, oh fuck, dude, this is not good. This is very concerned for her. And then I think the FBI goes into, they get like a different doctor, and they go into the house and they find her. They're like, what the fuck? You're telling me she's been taking insulin? No way, dude. This is not how someone... What the fuck is going on here? So they take her to a hospital, and they literally have her guarded with like... There's a guard in her hospital room with a gun at the just sitting by the door. And they start actually treating her properly, and she makes like a complete recovery, and she's fine now. And obviously she learned some stuff while she was in the hospital. They don't show that, but you can just kind of intuit. And they have this meeting between her and DiCaprio. And oh no, wait, I think that happened afterwards. I forget what it was that made him turn around. Oh, his fucking I think it's like his daughter died or something. A lot of shit goes down, and eventually DiCaprio decides that he's not going to defend his uncle. Let's see. Yeah, it was his daughter's death. Makes him think really critically about the people who are actually important to him. And he testifies against his uncle. And then there's just this scene after Molly, she's recovered. She's been sitting in on the proceedings. And during it, he says, like, yes, I was complicit in this. Yes, I helped him. He says all the things that he admits to everything. And they ask him, was part of the scheme to get you to marry, that you would marry Molly's, I forget what her last name is, her like maiden name is, to marry your wife. And he goes, no, I married her because I loved her. And they have this scene, and she asks him like if he told the truth, and he says he did. And she asks him, what did you put in my insulin? Or like, what did you give me in my injections? And there's this moment, and you just see that like spinelessness again in him, and he just freezes, and he's visibly like nervous, like you can see the anxiety in his stomach, and he says, just insulin. And she looks at him for a few seconds, and then she just leaves the room. And it's like, fuck. Her acting is tremendous. I haven't talked about her too much because she's not quite the main character. Lily Gladstone is fantastic. If she won an Oscar for this movie, she would totally deserve it. She just has this wonderful presence. She has this really powerful on-screen aura to her, where she, like, the scenes where they're getting to know each other at the start of the movie there's this great scene where he's at her house, and he's trying to make conversation. He'll like ask her a question, and she doesn't even answer. She just kind of like smirks at him. And like the silence and his, you can kind of see the root of like how, again, like the spinelessness a little bit. He's just completely paralyzed by just her gaze. Like, she's really good in the movie. Everyone gives a really good performance. You would kind of expect it with a cast like this. Apparently very historically accurate. Scorsese was very committed to portraying the story of what happened here. Consulted with a lot of Osage people. They speak Osage in the movie, like, very often. In fact, one of the ways that you can tell the passage of time is that DiCaprio's character can speak, like, from what I can tell, fluent Osage after a certain point. So you're like, oh, he's been there a couple years. And then you see, like, their kids growing up, and you're like, okay, yeah, time has passed. So and they don't put subtitles on those Osage lines either. You just kind of have to intuit what's going on. And I think that's an interesting decision, because there's got to be, like, less than, how many people do you think speak? Let me look this up. How many people speak Osage? The Osage language. It's a Siouan? Is that how it is? The U.S. state of Oklahoma. Oh, it's extinct. Oh, revival. As of 2009, there are 15 to 20 speakers. Yeah. So, there's like 20 people in the world who speak this language. As of 2009, about 15 to 20 elders were second language speakers of Osage. The Osage language program, created in 2003, provides audio and video learning materials on its website. Yada yada. So, legislative responses to the movie, huh? Lieutenant Governor of Oklahoma named the film as a reason to increase subsidies for the film industry in Oklahoma. Okay. Yeah, so there's having no subtitles in those sections. Sorry for the long moments of unbroken silence. Having no subtitles in those sections it's an interesting choice, because it's okay. No one knows what they're saying, but I think you can generally follow it. It's a very good movie. I thought it was great.